The loudest sound in my memory from that day at the airport isn't the announcements or the rolling suitcases or some crying kid in line. It's a zipper, that sharp, ugly rip when the TSA guy tore my carry-on wide open and dumped my life out onto a metal table like it was trash. And then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You think you're special? Not today," while pieces of my sheet music slid off the edge of the steel and onto the dirty floor. I was 17, holding onto a scholarship and a 1920s Italian cello that was worth more than his car, on my way to the biggest audition of my life. And this man in a Navy uniform had already decided what kind of person I was before I even opened my mouth. What he didn't know, and this is the part that turned his whole world upside down, was that the woman watching him from a wall of security cameras upstairs wasn't just some supervisor. She was my mother, and she ran air security for the entire country. But we'll get there. Let me back up about an hour. That morning I stepped out of a black town car in front of Hudson International with 2 big suitcases, a carbon fiber cello case, and 10 years of practice sitting in my shoulders. You know that feeling when everything you've done up to that point suddenly feels like it's walking into the terminal with you. My driver, Mr. Harris, this older guy who'd driven my family for years, hoisted my bags onto a trolley like they weighed nothing, then rested his hand on the cello case for a second like it was alive. "You ready, kid?" he asked. I remember forcing a breath out and saying, "It just feels big." He gave me that sideways smile. "It is big. But you're bigger. You didn't win a raffle, you earned that plane ticket." It should have been my mom saying that. She's Dr. Patrice Ellis, chair of the National Air Security Council, the kind of woman who can walk into any airport and have a conference room cleared with one sentence. But that week she was stuck in D.C., grounded by storms, testifying about runway safety. So instead of a big dramatic send-off, it was just me, Mr. Harris, 3 pieces of luggage, and a whole lot of nerves. I rolled into the terminal and got hit with that familiar blast of too cold recycled air, the smell of coffee and perfume and stress all mixed together. And for a moment it felt like every childhood trip I'd ever taken with my mom, me holding her hand at the gate, her laptop under one arm, security badges around her neck. I checked in, handed over my passport, watched the agent's eyebrows climb when she saw European Conservatory of Music on my paperwork. "Vienna, huh?" she said. "Go make us proud." I laughed it off, took my boarding pass, and headed toward security. That's when my phone buzzed. "Tracking you. Be safe. Don't let anyone rush you with the cello." "I love you," my mom texted. I wrote back, "I'm in line. I'm good." "Love you too." Slid the phone into my pocket, and for a second I really believed it. That I was good, that this was just another hassle to get through before the rest of my life started. Then I saw Checkpoint C. The air changed as soon as I stepped into that corral of ropes and plastic bins. It felt thicker and hotter, like the stress just hung there. People were half undressed already, shoes in gray tubs, belts dangling from their fingers, laptops clacking into bins, kids asking why they had to take their backpacks off. And at the far end of the lane, like a final boss in a video game, stood Officer Dale Riker. You know the type, even if you've never met him. Big guy, buzz-cut, arms folded, chewing gum like every bite owes him money. Tinted safety glasses he definitely didn't need indoors. The kind of man who confuses being intimidating with being important. I watched him from a distance snap at an older Asian man who was moving too slowly. "Shoes off," I said. "Shoes off, you not hearing me." His voice cracked like a whip across the whole checkpoint, and the man fumbled with his laces, hands shaking, face red with embarrassment. No one stepped in. Of course, everybody just dropped their eyes and prayed the spotlight didn't swing their way next, because that's how these places work. I felt that little warning buzz in my chest, that instinct that tells you somebody enjoys the power they have a little too much. I checked my cello case for the 100th time with my eyes. Custom-molded airline paperwork tucked into the pocket measurements to comply with their own policies. I had flown with it before. It should have been fine. Just get through the machine, get to the lounge, breathe, I told myself under my breath as the line slowly moved. When it was finally my turn, I went into autopilot. Shoes off, coat off, laptop out, phone in the tray pockets empty. I moved like someone who'd been through dozens of airports in her life, because I had. I reached for the handle of my cello case to gently shift it toward the belt, and that's when he barked across the lane. "Hey, you with the coffin." Everyone's head turned. I looked up. Me. "Yeah, you," he said, already annoyed by my existence. "That thing's too big. You can't take that through. You gotta check it." My stomach sank, but my brain went into calm mode. "Sir, it's a cello, not a coffin," I said, trying to sound respectful and not terrified. "It meets the airline's carry-on dimensions. I have the documentation from the airline right here if you'd like to see it." I started to pull the folded papers from my pocket. He stepped around the podium faster than I expected, closing into my space so hard I could smell his cologne, that cheap, sharp kind that makes your eyes water. "I don't care what some gate agent told you," he said. "I decide what comes through my lane. You don't like it, you can take the bus to Vienna." I could feel people watching, feeling that secondhand embarrassment you get when you see someone being singled out, except there was something extra in the air, that silent, "Oh, of course he picked her," that hangs over these moments. "Respectfully, sir, this instrument can't go in the hold," I said, my voice thinner now. "It's temperature sensitive and it's on loan from my conservatory. If anything happens to it..." I trailed off because I didn't want to say out loud that if he threw that case too hard, he could basically destroy my career. He grabbed my boarding pass from the tray, glanced at it, saw the seat assignment, and his mouth twisted into something like a smirk. "First class," he muttered. "Look at that. And where does a kid like you get first-class money?" There it was, the real thing, right out in the open. It wasn't about safety. It was about the fact that a black girl was standing in priority in boots and a trench coat with a calm look on her face and a very expensive object at her side. "My mom works and I have a scholarship," I said tightly. It came out more clipped than I meant it to. "Uh-huh," he said, unconvinced, tossing my boarding pass back down. "Step out of the line. Over there." He pointed to the metal inspection table off to the side, the one that makes everyone a little nervous whenever they're told to go there. A hush rolled down the line behind me, that collective glad it's not me silence. "Sir, I'm not refusing your directions, I started, my voice cracking. His tone snapped up a level. "Are you refusing a federal security directive? That phrase is designed to make your soul leave your body." I pictured missed flights, interviews in windowless rooms, my name flagged in red on some government database, and every self-protective instinct I had made me swallow whatever pride was left. "No, sir," I said quietly. "I'm complying." I rolled my case over to the metal table, feeling every eye in the checkpoint follow me. "ID." "Boarding pass," he snapped. I handed them over. He read my name slowly, like he was tasting it for flaws. "Jordan Ellis. You some kind of prodigy?" "Jordan, I'm a musician," I said, focusing on my breathing because my hands had started to shake. "I just need to make my flight." He tossed my ID onto the steel with a loud clack that made me flinch. "Open it," he said. "The case. I can open it, but I need you to be careful," I said, trying to explain. "The humidity and the varnish and the strings are very sensitive. If you could just open the case," he repeated louder so the entire lane could hear. There was no winning that argument. My fingers shook as I unclipped each latch one by one, that tiny metallic click echoing in my head like a countdown. When I lifted the lid, the whole world shrank to that patch of velvet. My cello lay there, warm amber wood, glowing under the fluorescent lights, the fine grain shimmering every curve familiar, like looking at a friend's face. For a second, Riker actually paused. I saw the calculation in his eyes. This isn't some cheap school instrument, this is serious money. And instead of making him cautious, it lit something mean in him. "Looks like a good hiding spot," he said. And before I could even say please, his gloved hands were inside my case, grabbing at the body, at the neck. "Sir, don't touch the strings," I blurted, reaching in on reflex. "Your gloves, the oils, it can damage the gut." He slapped my hand away. Not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to sting, to let me know that any move I made toward that instrument was a threat in his eyes. "Back up," he barked. "Do not touch the officer." My eyes flooded on contact, partially from pain, mostly from humiliation. "You're going to damage it," I whispered. "That instrument is worth more than..." I stopped myself just in time because the end of that sentence, "more than you make in 10 years, was begging to come out, and I knew if I said it, my life would get a lot worse very quickly. He leaned closer, breath hot. "More than what, princess? More than my safety? You think you're different?" He ordered me to take the cello out of the case, to empty it completely, like there were secret compartments hiding contraband. I tried to explain that the foam was molded specifically to the instrument, that there was nowhere for anything else, but he just raised his voice over mine. So I did what he said. I lifted the cello out, hugging it to my chest like a kid, then gently laid my trench coat on the dirty steel table to protect the varnish and set it down as carefully as I could. He didn't even look at it. He turned his attention to the empty case like a predator with fresh prey ripping at the padding, tearing Velcro, yanking out the lining. A pack of rosin and a cloth fell out. He turned the whole thing upside down and shook it like a suitcase full of laundry, then let it crash to the floor. "Pick that up," I heard myself say, and my own voice surprised me. It was flat cold like someone much older. He laughed out loud. "I don't pick up trash. You do." Then he went for my carry-on. The zipper ripped, and there went my carefully folded life. Concert dress crushed into his fist, and then tossed aside underwear and toiletries spilled everywhere. He grabbed my folder of sheet music, the original scores my professor had annotated by hand, and flicked through them like junk mail. "Those are originals," I said, my voice cracking. "Please be careful. Paper is paper." He shrugged, shaking them so hard one of the pages tore right down the middle with that soft, ripping sound that made something in my chest give out. He watched my face like a scientist waiting for the explosion, waiting for me to snap so he could point and say, "There it is. There's the attitude." Phones were out now. I could see them in the corners of my vision, people pretending to check texts while recording. A businessman tried to step forward and say something, but Riker shut him down with a threat about a cavity search that made the man retreat instantly. It hit me then, crystal clear, that if I screamed, if I cursed, if I gave him the show he wanted, every stereotype sitting in the back of some future juror's mind would light up like a Christmas tree. So I did the scariest thing I could have done in that moment. I went very, very calm. I reached into my pocket and took out my phone. "Put the phone away," he snapped instantly. "No recording in the security area." "I'm not recording," I said, and my voice had this low, steady tone now that even I barely recognized. "I'm making a call." "You're not calling anyone," he scoffed. "You're not going anywhere until I'm done with you." I unlocked it, hit my mom's name, lifted it to my ear. "She's calling Mommy," he announced to the crowd, chuckling. "What's Mommy gonna do?" "Sweetheart, write a Yelp review." The line clicked. "Jordan," my mom said, "where are you?" "Still looking." Riker dead in the eye. I said clear enough for the microphones above us to pick up checkpoint C Lane 3 Hudson International. Badge number 4781, Officer Dale Riker. He has destroyed my property and is profiling me. The whole lane held its breath. "Put me on speaker," my mom said. "Better," I replied. "He wants to talk to you." I held the phone out toward him. He snatched it with this performative irritation. "Listen here, lady." He started puffing up. "Your kid is refusing to comply with federal security procedures. If you don't tell her to shut her mouth, I'm gonna..." And then he just stopped. His eyes drifted up to the big monitor above the lane, the one that usually shows wait times and generic safety videos. It flickered, glitched, and suddenly there she was. My mother's face, not on my phone, but 10 feet wide, piped in from a conference room in D.C., with the seal of the National Air Security Council behind her. Her voice rolled out of the overhead speakers, filling the checkpoint. "Officer Riker," she said, calm and cold. "We need to talk. You could have heard a pin drop." He went pale. Who is this?" he stammered. "This is Dr. Patrice Ellis," she replied, "Chair of the National Air Security Council, and the woman currently watching you mishandle my daughter on a live feed." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The title did the work for her. She called out instructions like she was reading a checklist. "Shut down the lane, divert passengers, secure the area, pull the last 60 minutes of footage." The Federal Security Director, Frank Delgado, appeared like he'd been teleported, pushing through the crowd with airport police behind him. One second it was just me and this man who thought he owned the lane. The next second it was like the whole system he worked for woke up and turned to look at him. Delgado moved to my side, apologized, promised to take care of the instrument, apologized again. My mom ordered them to escort me to a private lounge, get me a medic, hold my flight if needed. And right when I thought we were done, when I thought the worst part was over, Riker reached for one last rotten trick. "Hold on," he said loudly, pointing at my bag. "I didn't pull her for nothing, all right? I saw something. I saw a weapon." She tried to hide it in the side pocket when she saw me looking. The air went heavy, heavy in that way that only the word weapon can make it. Delgado looked at me, then at the bag. "Jordan," he said carefully, "did you pack this yourself?" "Yes," I said, tears already in my eyes again. "There is no weapon in there. I checked everything 3 times. It's in the side pocket." Riker insisted, sweating now. "Silver handle. The thing is, I knew there was nothing in that bag, but the confidence of his lie made my heart race like maybe reality could be rewritten if enough people believed him." Delgado pulled on fresh gloves, reached into the pocket Riker had pointed to, and when his hand came back up, there it was, a small, beat-up folding knife sitting in his palm like a verdict. "No," I whispered. "That's not mine. I don't own a knife like that. I don't even cook." Riker lit up like he'd won the lottery. "See?" he crowed, turning toward the camera. "I did my job. She was armed. You owe me an apology." My mom didn't freak out. She didn't raise her voice, she just focused. "Frank," she said through the speakers, "hold the knife up to the camera." He did. The image zoomed in. "That is a Harbor Ridge fishing knife," she said. 4-inch blade rust on the hinge. "Jordan, do you own a rusted fishing knife, Mom?" "I play cello," I said, anger finally breaking through the panic. "I don't fish." "Exactly," she replied. "Now, Officer Riker, you claim you saw her hide that blade in her bag." "With my own eyes," he said. She palmed it. "Interesting," my mom said quietly, "because a blade that size would have triggered the metal detector arch before she got to you, and I am looking at the log right now. No alarm, no secondary screening. So either physics doesn't apply in your lane or that knife came from somewhere else. You can't prove that he snapped. It's her word against mine." That's when his partner finally stepped up. Officer Cruz walked over from the X-ray monitor, hands shaking but voice clear. "It's not just her word," she said. "I saw you take that knife off a guy in a fishing hat at the start of the shift. You didn't log it. You put it in your pocket. And when you dumped her bag, I saw you slip it into the side. I also have the X-ray log. The knife never went through the machine inside that bag. The silence that followed didn't feel like fear anymore. It felt like a trap door opening under his feet." Delgado didn't waste time. He stepped forward, told Riker he was under arrest for evidence tampering and filing a false report and harassment of a passenger, and the airport cops cuffed him right there in front of everyone. Somebody started clapping, then another person, then it spread until the whole checkpoint was applauding as they walked him out in cuffs. Phones held high faces full of that raw mix of satisfaction and disbelief like, "Wow, I actually just watched that happen. Yeah, that happened." I wish I could tell you I felt triumphant in that moment, but honestly, I mostly felt tired. My hands were still shaking, my music was ripped. My cello had been manhandled, my stomach was in knots. Delgado treated the instrument like it was made of glass, helped me pack up, and 2 kind-looking agents were assigned to carry my other bags and walk me to a quiet room. I found out in the hallway that the airline had already been told to hold the flight. "He's not pushing back without you," one of them said. "Captain's orders." It took months for the rest of it to play out. The video went viral. Obviously, the hashtag was everywhere. Every angle of that checkpoint scene analyzed, slowed down, zoomed in. People I hadn't spoken to in years sent me links like, "Is this you?" Riker got charged and I watched his sentencing later. Watched him stand in front of a judge looking like a deflated version of the man I'd met, thinner suit hanging off him, eyes hollow. The judge talked about betrayal of public trust, about racism, about how planting evidence on a teenage girl to justify your ego isn't a bad day, it's a crime. He got 5 years, lost his badge, his pension, his right to ever work security again. He also got put on the no-fly list for life, which felt darkly poetic. A man who used an airport like his personal kingdom now can't even go through one as a regular person. His wife left his house, got vandalized. His name became shorthand for exactly the kind of officer people are afraid of meeting at checkpoints. Karma didn't hurry, but it didn't miss either. Meanwhile, I still had to go to Vienna. I still had to open that case, even when my hands didn't want to. A luthier in Europe looked at the cello, shined a little light down the F-holes, and told me the truth I already felt. A sound post had shifted. There was a hairline crack near the neck. "I can fix it," he said, "but it won't be exactly the same. Instruments remember." I just nodded and said, "So do people. Fix it anyway. I'll learn to play the new version." The audition was messier than I'd wanted. I hadn't been sleeping well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw fluorescent lights and heard that zipper. But when I stepped into the practice room and finally ran my bow across the strings again, there was this new tone in the low register, a kind of husky rasp that hadn't been there before. It wasn't pretty in a classic way, but it was honest. It sounded like something that had been through some things and was still singing. The panel heard it. They saw the nerves and the scars and whatever strength managed to make it through my fingers that day, and they let me in. A year later, I walked out onto a stage in a concert hall, lights warm on my shoulders, that same cello under my chin, the repaired neck smooth under my hand. I looked out into the dark and knew my mom was somewhere out there watching me the way she watched those monitors that day, completely focused. I took a breath, thought about that metal table and that ripping sound, and the moment I decided not to explode but to call, and then I pushed all of it into the first note. That hall shook with it. And somewhere miles away in a concrete room with flickering lights, a man who once made people strip off their shoes and belts on command was being told when to eat and when to sleep, learning the hard way what it feels like when someone else holds all the power. So yeah, in the end he paid, I played, and life moved on. But here's the part I still think about late at night, and the part I want you to think about too. If I wasn't who I am, if my mom wasn't who she is, if there wasn't a title next to her name and a direct line into those cameras, do you honestly think this story would have ended the same way? Or would that knife in my bag have been the only thing anyone cared about? Was that justice, or was that an accident of who my mother happens to be? I'm really curious what you think. So tell me in the comments, was 5 years enough for what he did? Would you have forgiven Officer Cruz for staying quiet, as long as she did? Have you ever seen someone hide behind a uniform to bully people they thought couldn't fight back? And if you were standing in that line watching it happen, do you think you would have spoken up or looked away? Hit. Like, if this made you feel anything, share it with someone who needs a reminder that power can be challenged, and subscribe if you want more real stories where people who get written off as not special end up writing the final chapter themselves.